And whoever you are, wherever you are, however you are in life right now, recognize that you are worthy to love yourself, to value yourself, to respect yourself on the path to becoming a more interesting person or doing anything you want to achieve in life. Hi everyone, and welcome back to my channel. My name is Erin, and this channel is all about becoming the coolest person that you know so that you can live an extraordinary life, and if you do choose to do so, build an extraordinary business. Today's video, we're talking about becoming a more interesting person. I mean, why would anyone want to become a more interesting person, you ask? Well, my friend, there are many, many reasons, and I'm going to get into those in just a second. But before I do that, I just want to address the decks and the guitar and all of the other stuff in the room. I'm actually on set at the moment for the branding shoot for my brand new program, Make Cool Shit, The Art of Being Original. This is a live program that I'm running in July 2024. And if you did want to come join us for that program, it is all about creating original content and becoming a megastar online. I just wanted to let you know that. That's all I'm going to say about that. If you were wondering why my set is so different to my usual set, that's the reason why. Okay, so let's get back to talking about becoming an interesting person. But first of all, I do just want to say one thing, and it wouldn't be an Erin May Henry video if I didn't say this. And I do understand that I can get very repetitive. I can get very annoying when I say things like this. And sometimes when you stumble upon a video about how to be interesting, you just want someone to tell you exactly what to do. But. I do just want to say, when it comes to being an interesting person, interesting itself is so subjective. Like, I think Samantha Jones is an interesting person, an interesting character. I've modeled a lot of my career. I was inspired by Samantha Jones at the early stages of my career, but I also think that someone like Van Gogh is an interesting person, and they are wildly, wildly different people. There isn't one certain aesthetic that it defines what it means to be interesting. Interesting really is in the eye of the beholder. And so when it comes to wanting to be a more interesting person, the first thing that you have to do is really define what interesting means to you. What do you find interesting? What do you find cool? Because if you don't define it, what you're going to allow is somebody else to define it for you. And that is always going to take you away from alignment. Life is all about getting into alignment with our soul. It's about getting into alignment with our most authentic self, because that is where the juice of life is. But if you are constantly living by somebody else's rules, then you're never going to be able to get into that alignment. And it doesn't just come for being interesting. It comes for things like success, relationships, career. Always defining what success looks like for you before going and chasing that thing or trying to evolve yourself to be that thing is always going to be the most important step. However, for the purpose of today's video, let's just create a little bit of a definition about what I mean when I say become an interesting person. You know, I say become an interesting person, I mean a more magnetic person, a magnetic version of yourself, a version of yourself that people want to hang around. But for the most part, it's you idolizing yourself, you looking at yourself in the mirror and actually thinking you have something to offer this world. That is what I mean in this video when I talk about becoming a more interesting person. So like I said in the beginning, why would you want to become a more interesting person besides stating the obvious? The first reason is because becoming a more interesting version of yourself is going to attract opportunities towards you. Becoming a more interesting person is really going to help you stand out. It's going to help you stand out in any area of your career. Even if you're working for an organization, if you are an interesting person doing good work, you're going to get noticed by management, and that's going to help you progress in your career. But being an interesting person on social media means that more people are going to notice your work, your following will grow, and it will lead to better opportunities for you to monetize or to just have an exciting career on social media. But also, being an interesting person, it means that you're going to attract interesting people into your world. It's going to help you build an eclectic network, and that is just going to make your life so much fuller and richer. You know, whether those are people you work with, collaborate with, or whether those are friends or even intimate relationships. You know, anyone that you attract into your life, when you are showing up as the most interesting version of yourself, then that is the same type of energy that you are going to attract. But the third reason, and I already mentioned this, but I'm going to mention it again, is so that you idolize yourself. If you are sitting there right now and you don't necessarily think that you are an interesting person, if you are talking about yourself to yourself, saying things like, I'm boring, I have nothing to offer the world, everyone else is so much more interesting than me, that is what we want to change. Because first and foremost, sure, it's amazing to attract opportunities and people into your life, but if you don't think you're an interesting person, if you don't think you're the coolest person you know, if you don't love yourself, all the rest of it, you know what I mean? Like, that is one surefire way not to live a happy life. So the most important thing is how you see yourself. All right, anyway, without further ado, let's get into my steps on how to become a more interesting person. Now, the first step in becoming a more interesting person, which really is going to help with the previous point of idolizing yourself, is do not contort yourself to fit other people's expectations of you. When you're showing up to a situation, a friendship, a conversation, a collaboration, if you are constantly masking, if you are constantly shrinking, if you are constantly contorting yourself to make the other person feel comfortable, that is not coming from an interesting space. That is coming from you dulling your light. That is coming from you playing small. To be an interesting person, you need to have a really strong sense of self. Now, I know this is like a bit of a paradox, because in order to become the coolest person you know and see yourself in a good light, you need to be interesting, but you need to be interesting in order to see yourself in a good light. But it truly does all come down to the decision to truly love yourself, to value yourself, to respect yourself, and whoever you are, wherever you are, however you are in life right now, recognize that you are worthy on the path to becoming a more interesting person or doing anything you want to achieve in life. But showing up to life, to relationships, to conversations with a strong sense of self, and not always changing yourself, molding yourself to the expectations of others, is the first step into being an interesting person, and the first step into having respect for yourself and therefore loving yourself. The second point that I have, and I mean, again, this wouldn't be an Erin May Henry video if I didn't mention this one, but get yourself some hobbies. Of course. Get yourself more hobbies, more interests, more passions. There is nothing more interesting in a human being than someone who is lit up by something. I'm not saying that this type of person doesn't have worth, but when I have a conversation with someone and they're not generally interested in many things, it just feels like the conversation lacks depth. I think personally that there is nothing more magnetic than somebody who has passion for something. When I think of an interesting person in my mind, it's sure, maybe an eclectic, out there character, but generally my inner definition of someone who is interesting is someone who is passionate about something. Like someone who's really good at a particular sport, or someone who is really dedicated to their art. That to me makes a person interesting. And so it's not only going to make you a more interesting person, it's just going to make your life richer. Really put yourself out there. It doesn't matter what your age is. It doesn't matter what your current skill level is. If there is anything that you are interested in, go and try that thing. I recently, just finally, for the first time in my life, took a pole dancing class, and oh my gosh, new hobby unlocked. It was so fun. But it's been all of the hobbies that I've had in the past: Muay Thai, motorbike riding, content creation. All of these things have allowed me to not only feel better about myself, literally that's how I became the coolest person I know, but it's allowed me to have more interesting conversations with more interesting people. The third thing I have to say on becoming a more interesting person is you want to expand your experiences. Whether it be the books that you're reading, whether it be the places that you go, the places you travel, the people you meet, try as hard as you possibly can not to stick to such a linear experience of life. You know, some people, they have the friends that they had in high school and the job that they've had for many, many years. And sure, that's an amazing, comfortable way to live. But we all know that greatness doesn't actually happen inside of our comfort zone. It's when you dare to color outside the lines. It's when you dare to explore territories that maybe feel a little bit intimidating, that you actually will expand not only your wealth of knowledge, which is an amazing thing, as well as your richness of life, but it's just going to allow you again to have more interesting stories to tell. It's going to allow you to just have different perspectives. It's going to allow you to look at life and other people with more empathy and love. world. The more different experiences that you can give yourself, the more that you are just going to be a fully embodied human being. And so I think some of the easiest things that you can do to achieve this is, just like I said in the beginning, read different books, like learn about different things. But my favorite is honestly just watching like a weird eclectic mix of different videos on YouTube. I can still do it from the comfort of my living room, but maybe it's about the drug crisis in parts of America, or maybe it's about how particular buildings were built in parts of Asia, or maybe it's about the history of certain movies and character development in movies. I just really allow myself to go down the rabbit hole of so many different topics, and I will say half the time when I choose a video like that, I'm not even like massively interested, like, oh my God, I have to watch this video. It's more like a small piquing curiosity that I allow myself to just, again, be witness to a different perspective, something that I didn't know before. Sometimes it leads to a full-blown binge, and sometimes it doesn't go anywhere. But again, it's just exposing yourself to different things, trying, at least giving it a little go, that is going to maybe point you in the direction of a new hobby or passion or interest unlocked. Now, I've talked about this before, but my next tip is allow yourself to indulge in sensuality. And no, I'm not talking about sex. I am talking about living life through your 5 senses. I feel like one of the things that makes us as human beings, as well as the life that we're experiencing, not as interesting as it could be, is that we are so living on autopilot. I feel like we don't have things to talk about because we are literally just going through our day, not even necessarily living it, just being there. How many times have you got to the end of the day and you're just like, did that even happen? Like, what happened today? I was just so busy and distracted and pulled in so many different directions that you get to the end of the day, your partner might ask you, how was your day? And you don't even know how to answer that question because you don't even know whether you lived it. It's like driving. Sometimes you get somewhere and you're like, how did I get here? That is not a way to live. When you indulge in sensuality, and I'm talking about the way that you hear things, the way that you taste things, the way that you feel things, the way that you smell things, when you slow down and ground yourself into sensual experiences, maybe that's going to a restaurant and actually tasting your food, when you are present in that experience, it alters you, it shifts you, it makes you a new human. Every single time you actually have an emotional experience, it creates, again, greater depth to who you are, and as well, stories to tell. If you go to a restaurant, you just scoff down your meal and then you leave, and then you're in a conversation the following week talking about that restaurant and someone asks you how it was and you're like, yeah, it was good. Or you're like, oh my God, the steak tartare, it was so spicy. And you know what I mean? Like, you don't have to become like a connoisseur of tartare, but you can have much more depth to that conversation because you actually were present in the experience. I think another thing when it comes to becoming an interesting person is you have to be courageous enough to have opinions. Someone who is always being agreeable, someone who doesn't necessarily have their own unique perspective on things, I don't find those people interesting. I know why we all do it. I am a chronic people pleaser, so trust me, I have done this many times in my life. But I think sometimes, even though they can be jarring, even though it can be an uncomfortable situation, the most interesting people to me are the ones that stand for what they truly believe in and are not rocked in any circumstance, in any situation. They have perspectives, they have opinions, and they aren't afraid to share those with the world. This all comes from you knowing what your values are. If you've never done an exercise to define your values, that is exactly where I would start. Because once you have a foundation of values, that is when you are going to be able to have perspectives and opinions on a range of different topics, because it's always looking at those different topics from the lens of those values. Another one, which is, I guess, a little bit more specific, but you become a more interesting person when you have the courage to express yourself with style. Now, I'm not talking about you need to dress like a super eclectic, artsy person with massive, colorful earrings and polka dots all over you. You don't need to dress outrageously. You just need to dress in a way that really expresses your true, authentic nature. I recently was working on a big project with a client of mine, a client and a friend of mine, Gala Darling. And during this project, she talked about how something she teaches within her body of work is using fashion as a conversational starter. She told a story about a girl who came to an event of hers years ago wearing a dinosaur necklace, and how even though she was really shy, it was actually the dinosaur necklace that opened up her ability ability to have lots of different conversations with people. And I will say, like, I do go out and get quite a few compliments. Pretty much every single time I go somewhere, someone will stop me and compliment me on something that I am wearing. So just having the courage to, like, I don't know, wear those freaking shiny silver boots or whatever, that necklace or that hairpiece, or do your hair in a certain way or dye your hair a certain color. If these are things you truly want to do, it's not only going to allow other people to perceive you as more interesting, it is really going to help you connect with people through the expression of your style. And the final thing that I do want to say on becoming a more interesting person is generally just be curious. Be present, be curious, ask questions, be interested in other people, be interested in the world around you. It's through this curiosity that you are truly going to expand yourself energetically, expand your knowledge, expand your experiences, just expand your vibe. And that, at the end of the day, really is the pathway towards being more interesting. That is the pathway to becoming the coolest person you know. All right, that is it for me. I really hope that you did enjoy this video on becoming more interesting, becoming the coolest person you know. I hope you enjoyed this set. And like I said, if you're watching this live and you wanted to come join my live program in July, it is called Make Cool Shit. I will leave it linked below. It is all about being interesting, being original, and becoming a megastar online through creating epic content. But either way, I love you so much. Thank you so much for hanging out with me today, and I will see you in the next one.